Hello and welcome to St. Matthias, Lenten devotions for this Thursday, April the 2nd, 2020. Jesus foretells the destruction of the temple in Mark chapter 13. And as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." And Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And as he sat on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all things are to be accomplished?" Jesus began to say to them, "See that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. These are but the beginning of the birth pains. But be on your guard, for they will deliver you over to councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over, do not be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. But when you see the abomination of desolation standing where he ought not to be, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let the one who is on the housetop not go down, nor enter his house to take anything out. And let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. And alas for women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infants in those days. Pray that it may not happen in winter. For in those days there will be such a tribulation as not has been from the beginning of creation that God created until now, and never will be. And if the Lord had not cut short the days, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, whom he chose, he shortened the days. And then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here he is,' or 'Look, there is the Christ,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform signs and wonders, to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But be on your guard. I have told you all things beforehand." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So in this passage, which is very dense, this passage has been used many, many times to talk about the end times and talk about the things that will happen in the time of tribulation when Jesus is to return. And people will continuously say, "Here it is. Here are the earthquakes. Here's the famines. Here's this." Indeed, Jesus is coming. But the reality is this, what Jesus is talking about here, going all the way back to the beginning of chapter 13, the first verses, he's talking about the destruction of the temple. He's talking about when the temple will be destroyed, and the disciples are saying, "These are wonderful stones and wonderful buildings." And Jesus says, "I tell you, not one of these stones is going to be left untouched. Not one of these stones is going to not be thrown down." And partly this is a continuation of the reality that Jesus has become the temple. When Jesus overturned the money changer tables, in a sense he's saying, "I am the temple." God's presence isn't found in the temple, that God's presence is found in me. And after the death and resurrection and ultimately the sending of the Spirit, the presence of God is found in us, right? This is the reality. We are the presence of God. We have the presence of God within us through the Holy Spirit. So we don't need to go to the temple. But Jesus begins to talk about things that are going to happen after he's gone. In this time leading up to the destruction of the temple, where where many are handed over, where there's a time of great persecution in the church, where the disciples are handed over to leaders, where the apostles are handed over as they continue to declare Jesus Christ is risen, and that powerful message that this crucifixion that's meant to be a warning to all, through that shameful, painful death of Christ, and his resurrection, that God is alive, and therefore you can't control us. You have no power over us. Death has no power over us. Caesar has no power over us. And that's a frightful message for the empire. And so he says, the world's going to hate you. Caesar's going to hate you. You're going to be dragged before councils, but don't worry about what to say. The Holy Spirit will give you the words. And then continues with, this time is coming, and most of the apostles aren't going to be alive to see it. Most of them have been martyred by the time the temple is completely destroyed in AD 70. But when Jesus says, when you see the abomination of the desolation standing where it not ought to be, let the reader understand. This is referring to the time in the Maccabees when Antiochus Epiphanes put his statue into the temple and such desecrated it. And so basically, it's when you see another desecration like this occur in the temple, the time is short. And indeed, that's exactly what was going to happen. Caesar was going to put, I believe it's Tiberius, put his own image, his own statue into the temple. And once that happened, Jesus says, just get out. There's no hope. The time is very short. When you see that profane action happening, it's too late. There's no more time for talks. There's no more time for hope. The decision has been made at that point, right? Just you need to flee. Everyone needs to flee. The urgency is right there. If you're in the field, don't even go back for your coat when you hear that happening. When hopefully it won't be winter. In winter, the streams rise up and flood, and it's just harder to get away. Pity the pregnant women and the nursing ones because they can't run as fast, right? I mean, this is really what Jesus is talking about. There's an urgency. The temple is going to be destroyed, and don't listen to anyone who's saying there's a false Christ or somebody is going to come here to save the temple. The temple is doomed. And so we have from the beginning of this chapter, the disciples declaring how great the temple is. And Jesus basically saying the temple is going to be destroyed. And this is part of, again, Jesus's prophetic ministry. Jesus isn't just the Son of God, as we've talked about before. He's also a prophet. He comes with signs of God. He comes in the signs that God that Jesus proclaims point to who he is in God. And so this whole reality of Jesus as just the Messiah. He's not just the Messiah. He's not just even the Son of God. He's also a prophet who's come, that when these things come true, this is the other reason. When the temple is destroyed and is taken over, it's why all of a sudden again, his words take off like wildfire. This indeed was the Christ. Everything he's saying is coming to pass again and again and again and again. These words often, as I said, that often are looking for today. They're not for today. They're for things that happen right after the resurrection, things that happen leading up to the destruction of the temple. All that being said, just for how to apply it for us today, primarily the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, when you're persecuted, but not even persecuted, when you're challenged, even when you're queried, trust that the Holy Spirit will give you the words. When you're asked something, just turn to God, and allow the Holy Spirit to speak in you, through you, with you. For this is a promise that God has. The Holy Spirit will give you words. The Holy Spirit will give you confidence, because God is longing for people to experience the presence of the Spirit and the presence of God within them. So do take hold of that in your daily life. When you think you don't know enough, when you think you're not smart enough, when you think you haven't prayed enough, or you think you're not holy enough, trust the Holy Spirit will be a blessing in you and through you. Amen. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and so you can get more videos as they come out. Mostly every day right now. I don't know what's going to happen after Easter, but there'll still be some devotion, I'm sure. Have a blessed day.